Zach here from Gravel by California, back in Butte County, as we're gonna go above Chico again, to Forest Ranch and beyond. Last year when I was out here, Mitty showed us around up into the Lassen National Forest and Butte Meadows, finding little knickknacks along the way. Today, I expect the same thing. I was gonna go by Paradise Lake, Lovelock, and well, I can't say much. I just want to discover it as much as you. So, let's roll. Once again, Chico was my home base for the ride, quaintly representing one of 75 California cities with over 100,000 people, as once again I headed east into the hills up Highway 32 with this 36-mile route that was vastly different than my Butte Meadows experience about 20 miles up the road. We started out just south of the center of Forest Ranch, totaling a group of 6 with Karin and Mark leading the way, along with Mehdi, Rob, and Ian rolling up the spine that is Highway 32, passing by the starting point in our map of the center of town, and with a decent amount of traffic, ducking off on the west side for only a mile, where we got a brief taste of gravel, even though we weren't near the heart of town, but still flipping soon back over the 32, where the bulk of our riding would take place, continuing on the next 3.5 miles of windy shot road. That's not the place to be if you're allergic to trees, as there were plenty of signs of life without people, with smoothness being the theme, first whizzing by on pavement, to this hard pack that didn't feel that much different, and the same went for the vehicles that didn't seem to skip a beat on it either. But soon we would come across a different type of dirt, as this sign said it all, turning onto Doe Mill Road, bringing a looser texture, but it was the pitch that was more of a nuisance, being a fair way to climb for less than a mile, getting a bit of a reprieve in the middle, with still signs that we weren't totally isolated, and hints there was space to descend to the east. But first, one last short pitch, and a bit of 18-wheel survival mode, as Doe Mill Road now brought our third different dirt surface, setting up the next couple of miles of downward trajectory that you shouldn't take with a grain of salt, as we would return up this later, because otherwise you'd be overlooking all this fun. The guard railing signaled a couple of things, one being the end of this descent, and the other crossing Butte Creek, as these waterways aren't just picture-worthy, responsible for these land formations thousands of years in the making. But this was also the point where Mehdi had to go back, which at least was a picturesque point to do so, as it was time to get ready for our first sustained climb of the day. What goes down must go up, reversing our progress in the Z-axis, as Doe Mill Road offers a consistent grade and continues its exceptional width that could fit a center lane, with this climb taking up 1.8 miles, averaging just under 7%. That has plenty of tree cover to assist, although it was starting to warm up underneath, once again uncovering unexpected residences, as the flattening out wasn't just a transition in effort, but to one of my favorite parts of the day. I used my Inspector Gadget ability to not understand the obvious on what unique feature was around us, even though there were plenty of other hints around, as if riding on ditch grade road wasn't a clue enough that had only a slight gain over a mile, before banking right for our turnoff, taking a brief moment for our first required dismount, which had a huge payoff making our way around the gate, taking us up to the Butte Creek Canal, which is in service for PG&E after being constructed by gold miners. That doesn't seem that technical vertically speaking, but it's probably the margin of error that's your biggest concern, not wanting to be the one needing to be fished out, as this flume doesn't appear to be tubing friendly, where we were hyper-focused on avoiding all the tree roots, with everyone on alert to point them out, meaning maybe I should put the camera down. And while we were finishing off this mini loop, there's actually another chapter of this ahead, reconvening at the Forks of Butte trailhead, taking in the southern section on PG&E land that was directionally overall straighter than the previous, but a little disorienting with the flume on the opposite side, with somehow the tree roots still making their way up, though not enough for me to record some viral splashing, ending our water adventure with everyone dry. We made a little U-ey on one of the main spines on the buttes in Skyway, immediately taking the next right, creating another lollipop, turning onto the even quieter Butte Road, beginning with some welcome gravel playfulness, with an ideal surface for off-roading, not even kicking up much dirt at these speeds. That unfortunately came to a quick end, crossing over this narrow bridge over Little Butte Creek, as there were still homes to find on this back road, which clocked in at just under 2 miles, before we merged onto the truncatedly named Butte Road that had a bit more openness to it, and was an efficient way to roll off the miles, but we stayed away from the many turnoffs for what lies below in Paradise Lake, which may sound familiar, while we were still chugging away, causing us to overshoot our turnoff a bit with this latest sector, starting with a rude climb as Doon Grade Road begins with some teeth-rattling rockiness, with the rudeness soon replaced with smoothness, although there was more surface majesty to come. But my concern wasn't about what was below, but back above, remembering that shade does some nice things for a ride, and the trees did come back into play after we didn't have to exert for the vert no more, adding in the wind for coolness, as this was the proper direction to enjoy this road, without the surface taking a toll on your triceps. If you're keeping score at home, we return to Butte Road, now pushing off in the other direction, quickly rolling into the small enclave of Lovelock that has its roots from way back in the 1850s, thanks to George Lovelock, who after moving 10 years later had another town named after him. And unfortunately, the inn has been shuttered since 2020, but we had some fun road miles ahead of us with our longest stretch on Skyway Road, starting off with a super speedy downhill that seemed to propel us for the entire 2.5 miles. And when our turn off onto Powellton Road soon led us to dirt right before we veered back onto Doe Mill Road, I didn't realize we were paralleling our previous portion of the flume until we passed by the trailhead where we started it all, meaning I knew we had a great section of downhill ahead of us, ripe to throw in a signature montage, but not too far into it, one of my batteries popped out. And it's a bit of a stretch to ask everyone to come back for a few minutes of video, but one thing was evident on the descent to Butte Creek from this side, that the gravel was far smoother, paired with an inordinate amount of space to roam, making it my favorite descent of the day, though coming back across the creek portended a mood shift, as our last climb of the day was our longest, and familiar returning back up Doe Mill Road, but obviously a bit more of a strain this go around, along with a few more recreationalists this time abound, who weren't out there to battle this grade above 7% that felt like a treadmill sending you backwards. But the reason why this climb was longer than the others was hooking a right on Garland Road instead of heading back the way we came in, adding an extra 1.25 miles of climbing, but at least the grade eased off at this point, making the last part of the effort, at least on the smooth variety, allowing for a great transition for some gravity assist, where the most help I needed was from keeping my camera smudgy, sensing from the locals that we were on the final chapter of this ride, taking advantage of this well-spaced foliage and a level playing surface to enjoy it. We reunited with Highway 32, marking the last 4 miles back, but once again, choosing parallelish bypasses to stay away from high-speed traffic as much as we could, That stage road felt like a complete opposite, so much that you could let your family roam on the blacktop without repercussions. Our last turnoff from the highway brought us back onto Forest Ranch Road, with a lot of G-force enjoyment, leaning on everyone's experience to lay off the brakes, and staying curious when the views below the butte opened up as I read the tea leaves that we were wrapping up, finishing up the final half mile on the highway, saying goodbye for now, but hello to another fun adventure. So, to recap, I like the fact that today's ride was in some ways similar, but in some ways a lot different. Of course, you're not going to change the way this forest looks and the density of trees, but how you approach it, the surfaces, the views. Also, the vibe seemed to be a lot more chill towards bikes, and the roads were in much better shape. Just a fantastic day. And if you want to support us, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, or go to our shop or support us on Patreon so we can bring you more from the state of dirt.